on this week's episode of the Algorithm Podcast.
Jeffery Dahmer was an American serial killer who took the lives of 17 men and boys between 1978 and 1991. Dahmer sought out his victims, mostly black men, at gay bars, malls, and bus stops, lured them home with promises of money or sex, and gave them alcohol laced with drugs before strangling them to death. He would then engage in sex acts with the corpses before dismembering them and disposing of them, often keeping body parts as souvenirs. He frequently took photos of his victims at various stages of the murder process so he could recollect each act afterwards and relive the experience. Dahmer was captured in 1991 and sentenced to 16 life terms. He was killed by a fellow prison inmate, Christopher Scarver, in 1994.
Hello, algorithm friends and family. Welcome to another episode of the Algorithm Podcast, episode 6.
Yes, sir.
Happy October. I'm your host, Carl Holliday. My close people that I have in my life call me Barl.
Big Barl.
I'm joined by
co-host Erica Holiday, aka Barl's wife.
There we go.
I'm Garrett Cunningham, a.k.a. G Freezy.
A.k.a. G Weezy, a.k.a. G Freeze, a.k.a. the Kurger Bing. And we are also joined by Tap and Tiff. Make sure you guys subscribe to all the socials.
Please do that.
Today's episode we have Mr. Jeffery Dahmer.
Yes, sir.
Starting off spooky month strong with one of the world's most notorious serial killers. But we back after a successful Delphi episode.
Yeah.
A lot of love on that
Still
episode.
growing, too. Love it.
Spooky month is one of my favorite months out of the year. I would have it number 2 behind December.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you're all about the horror, aren't you?
Absolutely not.
It's like one of your favorite months. Is it your favorite month? Or is it just fall in general? I think it's
love
just fall in general.
I love Halloween. This is the first year we don't get to go to haunted houses.
Yeah.
I'm very upset. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Dahmer was born in Milwaukee on May 21st, 1960, to Lionel and Joyce Dahmer. He was described as an energetic and happy child until the age of 4, when a traumatic and painful recovery following surgery to correct a double hernia seemed to effect a change in the boy. Noticeably subdued, he became increasingly withdrawn following the birth of his younger brother and the family's frequent moves. By the time Dahmer was of school age, the family had moved to Ohio. From a young age, Dahmer developed a fascination with animal bones and studied how to be clean and preserve them. As a child, he collected large insects and the skulls of small animals preserved in jars and
Formaldehyde.
Yeah, it's like it preserves all that stuff.
By his early teens, he was disengaged, tense, and largely friendless. Dahmer claims that his compulsions toward necrophilia and murder began around the age of 14, but it appears that the breakdown of his parents' marriage and their acrimonious divorce a few years later might have been the catalyst for turning these thoughts into actions. His parents' numerous arguments and the constant tension in the house made Dahmer question the solidity of his family and life.
Pretty much like we were talking about this earlier. Where do we think it really... He says it like kind of began at the age of 14, but do you think he could have been like born with this?
I can understand blaming some of your adult actions on your parents, but killing people and eating them and doing the extent of things that he did, no.
Yeah,
You can be born with like mental disorders, or those can develop over time.
just like his necrophilia compulsions.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like a little bit of... It could have been like a combination of the two, of like the things he grew up around and then just having almost, developing these, maybe a mental disorder, when he's younger, and then it leading into the things he did as an adult. But I don't know, man. He's obviously this really rare case of just crazy-ness in every aspect. So.
He's very intelligent, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's super
Very
intelligent. I mean,
smart
he went to
person.
Ohio State, so for one quarter.
Dahmer started drinking at age 14, and by the time of his first killing at age 18, his alcohol consumption had spun out of control. He dropped out of Ohio State University after 1 quarter term, and his recently remarried father insisted that he join the Army. Dahmer enlisted in late December 1978 and was posted to Germany shortly thereafter. His drinking problem persisted, and in early 1981, the Army discharged him. Although German authorities would later investigate possible connections between Dahmer and murders that took place in the area during that time, it is not believed that he took any victims while serving in the armed force. Following his discharge, Dahmer returned home to Ohio. An arrest later that year for disorderly conduct prompted his father to send Dahmer to live with his grandmother, Catherine Dahmer, in Wisconsin. But his alcohol problem continued, and he was arrested the following summer for indecent exposure. He was arrested once again in 1986 when 2 boys accused him of masturbating in front of them. He received a 1-year probationary sentence.
Doing some shit like that today, you'd go to fucking prison.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Rightfully
1 year
so.
probation.
Yeah.
Not enough.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Already on some weird shit.
Yeah, and it almost makes me think back to what they say he had double hernia surgery.
Yeah.
It's like, I wonder what kind of complications he had in that. Like, I wonder if there was something. I don't know. It's just weird. I mean, obviously it's just a hernia surgery, but it's like, what? Because that's what they kind of talked about, was like how he was kind of different after that surgery. Like, I wonder what could even.
I didn't know that.
Isn't that what it said at the beginning? Yeah, and it's like I don't know what could have happened that made him start changing as a person at that point. But it's almost like you see things like even like fighters, like we've talked fights a lot in the past, and it's like those guys, they'll get. And football players too, they get the CTE and they're more compulsive, they're more or impulsive, they're more willing to take risks.
Night and day, like a light
yeah,
switch.
Like, almost like kind of points you in that direction almost, the way he acted.
Wasn't that, and he had a brother or something born too, which kids usually act out whenever they have.
Yeah.
So I just researched, and not defending this dude at all, but it does say that anesthesia can basically alter your brain chemistry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. I wonder what that could have been one of the complications that led to this dude just being a completely different human.
And being back then, they probably didn't have the research or like the technology to like find something like.
And how old was he when he had that surgery?
Wasn't he? I don't know.
Because it says it can affect. Anesthetics received during surgery were shown to be associated with brain dysfunction in young and elderly.
See, that's
yeah,
crazy.
until the age of 4 is when he had
Wow.
the traumatic and painful recovery.
Yeah, because I mean, I know there's probably some fans out there, but I was talking to Carl actually, and Todd was on the phone. He's watched it before too, but I was a real big fan of the show Dexter, and that's like literally the way this guy acted. Like that's kind of like the same show. Like Dexter's character was into like killing animals and stuff as a young kid, and then his adopted father was a policeman for the Miami Police Department, and like recognized that he was going to be a serial killer as a kid, and like pushed him in the direction of like only using it for good though. Like you have these what would you call them, like
Impulses?
urges, yeah, these
Craving.
impulses and urges to do to do these things, but in the show he used it for good, so it's like almost like the same type of stuff. So
Did you watch Dexter? I haven't watched it.
it's a good show. You guys would
And
like
it's
it
a
for
good
sure.
show.
Yeah, I haven't watched it. Dahmer murdered 17 men between 1978 and 1991. He was careful to select victims on fringes of society who are often itinerant or borderline criminal, making their disappearances less noticeable and reducing the likelihood of his capture. He lured them to his home with promises of money and sex, then strangled them to death. He engaged in sex acts with their bodies and kept body parts and photos as souvenirs. His most popular nicknames, the Milwaukee Cannibal and the Milwaukee Monster, reflect his heinous crimes. Dahmer's first murder occurred after graduating from Revere High School in June 1978, when he picked up an 18-year-old hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks and took him home to his parents' house. Dahmer proceeded to get the young man drunk, and when Hicks tried to go, Dahmer says, "I didn't want him to leave." Dahmer killed him by striking him in the head and strangling him with a barbell. Dahmer dismembered Hicks's corpse, packed the body parts in plastic bags, and buried them behind his parents' home. He later exhumed the remains, crushed the bones with a sledgehammer, and scattered them across a wooded ravine.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna read some of this stuff, and it's just gonna make you speechless. Like, you just you'll have to sit and just process, like, the things that he did to these people.
Yeah, and that's like, I mean, we'll probably touch on it here. Might be jumping ahead a little bit, but like just what they talked about in a lot of the stuff that I watched was just like how this guy just didn't have like any type of reaction to things that would just completely that were just completely grotesque and would just gross anybody out to the point of like, I can't even look at that. And this dude just had no reaction to these things.
Having sex with their dead bodies, cutting off the body parts and taking pictures of them.
Yeah.
Like, I think there was...
It was a trophy to him.
Yeah, I think there was something that I listened to or read that he would use these pictures as like shrines.
Yeah. He said at one point in one of the interviews that he did when he was in prison that he started making like a shrine of like their skulls and stuff. Like, it was almost like, he said it was hard for him to even explain, but it was like a spot where he could like get his thoughts together. Like it reminded kind of be a little funny. Like, it reminded me of like Helga Pataki and Hey Arnold, how she had the shrine for Arnold and shit in her closet. Like, this dude's just got people's heads and pictures of their dead bodies in a room, just like.
It wasn't until September 1987 that Dahmer took his second victim, Stephen Toomey. They checked into a hotel room and drank, and Dahmer eventually awoke to find Toomey dead with no memory of the previous night's activities. He later told police he intended to drug Toomey but not kill him, and he could not believe that this happened. Dahmer bought a large suitcase to transport Toomey's body to his grandmother's basement, where he dismembered and masturbated on the corpse before disposing of the remains. He kept Toomey's head, which was wrapped in a blanket, for weeks after the murder. Dahmer later said that after Toomey's killing, his obsession with killing went into full swing, and he didn't even try to stop it after that. He killed 2 more victims at his grandmother's house before she forced him to move out in 1988. She had no knowledge of his crimes but was tired of his drinking, his tendency to bring young men to their house, and the foul smells occasionally coming from her basement.
Foul smells.
I was about
Leave
to
that
say,
in.
there's no way.
The foul smells occasionally coming from her basement.
I was about to say, there's no way she's not smelling something in that
Yeah.
house.
Yeah,
That head
He's
in there
keeping
for
head
2
for
weeks.
Yeah.
Grandma's gotta know something's up. Like, the men come in and they don't leave.
What if she was just like
I don't know. You have to smell it.
Thurman Merman's grandma from like back
Thurman
then?
Merman.
She just passed out in the recliner all the time.
Yeah.
Making some sandwiches.
He kept Toomey's head, which he wrapped in a blanket, for weeks after the murder. Like,
I was watching something yesterday. It was actually one of the interviews he did while he was in prison, and they talked about how he actually would take one of the skulls to work with him. Because he worked
put
at
it
a
in his
chocolate
locker.
factory. He would just put it in his locker,
Yeah.
and it was
And
almost
they
like
were
a.
no one
I didn't know that.
She asked him, the lady that was interviewing asked him if it was like a thing to like flaunt it, to feel like, you know, to almost have like that rush of like, oh, I got the skull with me here,
Like a
almost to,
thrill.
like show off like a thrill. And he was like, no, it was because that's what he kept like saying, was how like having the body parts, and like he wanted to keep the people, and like, and when he was eating them, like make them feel like they was like almost a part of him, like his own being. So like he even took the skull to work with him, bro, which is insane.
Kind of makes sense because it goes back to like the Stephen Hicks kid, where he says he just didn't want him to leave.
Yeah.
And it was his way of just keeping him there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was his way of like feeling superior.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Like having that there, like that's how much of not a fuck he gave.
That's why I
Right.
think it's like a
To keep
compound
that there.
issue. Like it could have been, you know, a little bit of the anesthesia thing we talked about earlier, but then just like his lifestyle in general, like
I think there's layers.
yeah,
and
there's
layers.
definitely layers of issues there.
Yeah.
But in September 1989, about a year after moving into his new apartment, Dahmer lured a 13-year-old Laotian boy to his house, claiming he wanted to take nude photos of him. This resulted in charges of sexual exploitation and second-degree sexual assault for Dahmer. He pleaded guilty, claiming that the boy had appeared much older. While awaiting sentencing for his sexual assault case, Dahmer again put his grandmother's basement to gruesome use. In March 1989, he lured, drugged, strangled, sodomized, photographed, dismembered, and disposed of Anthony Sears, an aspiring model. Dahmer found Sears particularly attractive and later said that he did not want to lose him. And so Sears became the first victim for whom Dahmer kept preserved body parts for a long period of time, mummifying his head and genitals. At his trial for child molestation in 1989, Dahmer was the model for contrition, arguing eloquently in his own defense about how he had seen the error of his ways and that his arrest marked a turning point in his life. His defense counsel argued that he needed treatment, not incarceration, and the judge agreed, handing down a 1-year prison sentence on a day release, allowing Dahmer to work at his job during the day and return to prison at night, as well as a 5-year probationary sentence.
None of that is long enough for child molestation. I'm just going to start with that. He should have been in prison from that moment on.
I was going to say this judge could have prevented a lot, but I don't think it would have helped. I mean, I still think he would have done it when he got released anyways.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I hate like saying like it had something to do with it, but I think like, you know, it's been one of those things where like all of his victims were like minority, so like there's just this kind of like
he said,
give a shit type.
Yeah,
thing
he
about
said there wasn't like a racist thing about it.
Yeah.
It was just what he was attracted
I
to.
think that was just his preference.
Yeah, like
obviously his method was to, you know, his necrophilia and stuff. So like obviously he was attracted to all of them.
yeah, they said he was like the lone white guy in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you watch the Netflix thing, it's literally like that. Like he went to gay bars and it was like nothing but black people.
Yeah, I haven't
Well, and I
watched
think
it.
it all had to do with the neighborhood that he lived in also. I think it was considered like a low-income
Yeah.
poverty.
They literally said he was like the only white guy on the block.
Yeah. Years later, in an interview with CNN, Lionel Dahmer stated that he wrote a letter to the court that issued the sentence requesting psychological help before his son's parole. However, Dahmer was granted an early release by the judge after serving only 10 months of his sentence. He briefly lived with his grandmother following his release, during which time he does not appear to have added to his body count before moving back to his own apartment. Over the next 2 years, Dahmer would kill 12 more people, bringing his total victim count to 17. His first victim during this time was a prostitute named Raymond Smith, whom Dahmer lured to his apartment for sex, gave a drink laced with sleeping tablets, and then strangled. Dahmer took photos of his body in suggestive positions before dismembering him. With his next victim, Edward Smith, Dahmer accidentally destroyed his skull while trying to dry it in the oven, making it explode. He later told police that he felt rotten about Smith's murder because he was unable to keep anything from his body, making it feel like a true waste.
What the fuck? Like, we don't mean to laugh, like chuckle at this shit, but it's so insane.
Yeah.
Like, this is insane.
Like, that's
he
the only
blew
reason
his
he
skull up. Is that what it said?
Yeah, that's the only reason he felt rotten.
felt
about it.
bad.
He
Yeah.
had,
He felt
Because
bad because he couldn't
keep
say.
any of it, like as a
It's like, darn,
trophy.
man. I tried to keep your skull, but it's
That's
fucking
just
blown
how you,
up.
How you know there was like severe mental issues. No normal person thinks that way.
Which we'll get to that later. As far as, you know, do we think he should have got the insanity plea, or do we think he should have got what he got? We'll get to that for sure, because that was a highly controversial thing
Yeah,
about
definitely.
all of this. Dahmer started developing rituals as he progressed with his killings, experimenting with chemical means of disposal and often consuming the flesh of his victims. Dahmer also attempted crude lobotomies. He drilled into the skull of his 11th victim, Errol Lindsay, while he was still alive, and injected him with muriatic acid. Dahmer hoped this would place Lindsay into a permanent submissive state, but Lindsay awoke during the procedure and said, and I quote, "I have a headache, what time is it?" End quote. So Dahmer strangled him. We talked about that earlier. That is fucking insane.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to say fucking insane a lot this episode. This dude drilled into his skull and put acid in it while he was alive.
Yeah. And he was still alive. Like,
And
that's
he
crazy.
woke
Like,
up saying, "I have a headache." Can you imagine being the victim in this?
Man.
Like, that is nightmarish shit. I can't even. Do they show that in the Netflix series? Do they show that?
They
shit?
pretty much like follow the timeline perfect. I mean, because
I've heard it was like almost
Yeah.
to the T.
yeah.
I don't even want to say that show was good. It does portray a lot of like what really happened, but my heart, I would think, goes out to the victims. It doesn't.
Oh, for sure,
It doesn't
for sure.
show
We're
that
not
the
we're not
victims.
like praising Jeffrey Dahmer or anything.
This
I will
is a hard
say,
episode.
yeah, I will say, Evan Peters, the dude who played Dahmer, got like a bunch of awards.
I think
for
he
playing
had to
him.
have like true psychological.
And
help
he
after
did.
that-
He had to have
after that show,
psychological
too.
help after getting
He
prepared for that
couldn't get
Dahmer.
himself out of the character.
It's like
after that
like
one.
what happened with like Heath Ledger and Joker. Like these guys take themselves to such a dark place. On May 27th, 1991, Dahmer's neighbor Sandra Smith called the police to report that an Asian boy was running naked in the street. When the police arrived, the boy was incoherent and they accepted the word of Dahmer, a white man in a largely poor black community, that the boy was his 19-year-old lover. In fact, the boy was 14 years old and was unbeknownst to Dahmer, the younger brother of the Laotian teen Dahmer had molested 3 years earlier. So, we're obviously going to get into the rest. This is the
This
most.
town is just full of stupid people.
This pissed me off the most. I think it
Yeah.
pissed you off the most too because this could have saved a lot of people's lives.
And this is where I kind of touched on like the race thing, because it's like to not even check into that when this guy already molested his older brother. Like that's insane, bro.
The judge
You hear
that gives
the-
him 1 year and 1 year,
Yeah.
and then the cops that don't believe the boy
Yeah,
and they believe Dahmer that
Yeah.
they're just lovers.
Didn't run a background
This is a
check or
didn't do
anything.
anything.
Yeah.
And they actually, I think they even went into the apartment that night.
Yeah, they
too.
like peeked in. I think it says this.
Yep.
We're about to get to it. The police escorted Dahmer and the boy home, clearly not wishing to become embroiled in a homosexual domestic disturbance. Are you fucking kidding me? They took only a cursory look around before leaving. According to Dahmer, an officer peeked his head around in the bedroom but didn't really take a good look, and then left after telling Dahmer to take care of the boy, according to Masters. Once they left the scene, Dahmer injected hydrochloric acid into the boy's brain, killing him. Had the police conducted even a basic search, they would have found the bodies of Dahmer's 12th victim, Tony Hughes.
Yep.
Dahmer killed 4 more men before he was finally arrested. One of his last victims was Oliver Lacey, of 24, whose body Dahmer had sex with before dismembering the corpse. He kept Lacey's head and heart in his refrigerator and his skeleton in the freezer.
In the Netflix series, there's a neighbor that's always calling the police, always calling the landlord of the building,
Yeah.
always talking about the smell coming from his apartment. And she calls and she calls
Calls,
and she
yeah,
calls.
the whole time.
And if one person, and I don't know if this neighbor played a role in real life, but if it's the case and one person would have taken her seriously,
Yeah.
it could have saved so many lives.
Yeah, I'm curious about that because I know Netflix kind of puts their own spills on like the stories like this, but if that lady was real, like if she was really calling and stuff like that, this is fucking
Yeah, even
ridiculous.
that much, it just makes
Well, I
it look that
watched
much
some
worse.
of like the trial, and the guy, like the apartment manager, where he lived,
Yeah.
said that almost every single person that lived in that complex complained about the smell coming from his. He said he can't say that every single one, but almost
The
every
majority.
single one of them.
That's
Which is
complained about the
insane. I mean,
smells.
at what point do you go check it out?
Yeah.
like, I guess before Dahmer, like who was there? Like Like as far as like profiled people, I don't.
Gacy. What's his name? Gacy.
Was Gacy before? I
Yeah.
think Gacy might have been before.
Yeah, because he was actually Gacy was actually executed the day that
We're gonna.
sentence maybe.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I do because Gacy was asked about Dahmer, and Gacy was like to compare me to Dahmer. Like he was saying, like they're not the same. Like
Yeah.
we're completely different. And
Right.
Gacy, we're doing a John Wayne Gacy episode.
Oh yeah.
We're going to. Do you know who Gacy is? He was like the
Clown.
guy who
Clown
dressed
guy.
up as the clown.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to do a Gacy episode.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Who's it on? Is it on Tiffany?
What?
Yeah.
I think it's on Tiffany.
Okay.
Alright.
Take a drink.
I think this is where he gets arrested and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, in a lot of, I think some of the stuff I've seen, they even talked about he might have had drilled into that boy's head before he escaped. The kid that he killed.
I don't know, but they played the 911 call of the lady that called that in when that 14-year-old boy was wandering
was
in
the
the
na-
streets
That's the lady.
naked.
I thought that was the
Yeah,
neighbor.
Regina Hall
They
played her
played
in the
that
show.
911 call, like on one of the
Yeah.
something that I watched, and she was like frantic.
You'll have to find that.
I have to find that. I'll probably put that in. Hey, I'll probably put the 911 call in when I do the editing and stuff.
Yeah. It was crazy. Like, that they let him go back with just believing somebody.
They just didn't care, man.
Yeah. Okay.
You can just go ahead and go, because I'm probably just going to keep all this in.
Dahmer's killing spree ended when he was arrested on July 22nd of 1991. The body parts found in Dahmer's refrigerator and Polaroid photographs of his victims became inextricably associated with his notorious killing spree. 2 Milwaukee police officers were led to Dahmer when they picked up Tracy Edwards, a 32-year-old black man who was wandering the streets with handcuffs dangling from his wrist. They decided to investigate the man's claims that a weird dude had drugged and restrained him. They arrived at Dahmer's apartment, where he calmly offered to get the keys for the handcuffs. Edwards claimed that the knife Dahmer had threatened him with was in the bathroom. When the officer went in to corroborate, I keep wanting to say collaborate.
It kind of looks like collaborate, like first
Corroborate the story. He noticed Polaroid photographs of dismembered bodies lying around. Dahmer was subdued by the officers, after which he muttered the words, "For what I did, I should be dead." Subsequent searches revealed a head in the refrigerator, 3 more in the freezer, and a catalog of other horrors, including preserved skulls, jars containing genitalia, and an extensive gallery of some kind of Polaroid photographs of his victims. Dahmer later said he planned to build a private altar of his victims' skulls, adorned with incense sticks and globe lights. He hoped the altar would be a place where he could feel at home.
Yeah, I talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the cop
That's what he called it,
the
was it?
cop discovered one of the cops. I think one cop had Dahmer like down, like pinned, like arresting him and stuff. Another cop was like walking through the apartment or whatever, and like he opened up the fridge or freezer, and like a head was just sitting there, and like the cop let out like a scream, like, and he said
He thought somebody else was in there.
Yeah, he said there's a fucking head in the freezer. Yeah.
One of the cop that he actually said that he thought somebody else was in the apartment when he heard the scream, but like through shock, like later realized that it was him screaming. Yeah. And that it's kind of weird. We were watching something yesterday. It's kind of off topic, but the last guy that actually he tried to kill and got arrested for, that guy ended up actually being arrested for murder in 2011.
No shit.
Yeah.
I didn't know
we
that.
watched like his interrogation and shit on Court TV or something yesterday.
Shit probably fucked him up to a point where it drove him to
He was
that.
accused of helping another person shove somebody off a bridge in Milwaukee. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Can you imagine being the cops that day in Dahmer's apartment?
Dude, I don't know how.
Seeing the Polaroids and just seeing the head and like...
I wouldn't be able to stomach that stuff.
Could you imagine being the cops that showed up to the 911 call with a 14-year-old boy?
So,
Back into Dahmer's
so I heard a little bit about that. And those cops got tried for something, and they got pretty much...
They got off.
They got off on all of it. But they were pretty much saying, like, it's our job to, investigate situations based on what they are, and we didn't see anything out of the normal when we investigated it.
Right.
Pretty much defending what they fucking did.
But, like nowadays, like the process, and even then probably the processes they're probably supposed to go through, like any time, like you get pulled over, give me your ID, give me this, give me that, and they did none of that. They didn't take any of the steps to even identify, and they just said, "Oh no, you're good."
They know how your shit smells when they arrest you now.
Right, yeah. And it probably wasn't too far off that back then. They just didn't do it. They just didn't go through any processes.
It takes shit like Ted Bundy. It takes shit like Dahmer. It takes shit like Manson and shit to just investigate people. Yeah.
Shit's crazy. Dahmer's trial began in January 1992. Given that the majority of Dahmer's victims were black, there were considerable racial tensions, so strict security precautions were taken, including an 8-foot barrier of bulletproof glass that separated him from the gallery. The inclusions of only one black person on the jury provoked further unrest, but was ultimately contained and short-lived. Lionel Dahmer and his second wife attended the trial throughout. Dahmer initially pled not guilty to all charges despite having confessed to the killings during police interrogation. He eventually changed his plea to guilty by virtue of insanity. His defense then offered the gruesome details of his behavior as proof that only someone insane could commit such terrible acts. The jury chose to believe that the prosecution's assertion that Dahmer was fully aware that his acts were evil and chose to commit them anyway. On February 15, 1992, they returned after approximately 10 hours of deliberation to find him guilty, but sane, on all counts. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms in prison, with the 16th term tacked on in May. And I believe that was the first murder in Ohio. So he was actually tried later for the one in Ohio.
Yeah, there was one that he was tried for that he admitted to, but he couldn't remember the details or he didn't know where the body was, so they didn't charge him for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Which
that
is
16th one was the one in Ohio of the hitchhiker or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The first one.
Yeah. Dahmer reportedly adjusted well to prison life at the Columbia Correctional Institution in south central Wisconsin. Though he was initially kept apart from the general population, he eventually convinced authorities to allow him to integrate more fully with other inmates. He found religion in the form of books and photos sent to him by his father, and he was granted permission by the Columbia Correctional Institute to be baptized by a local pastor. I actually watched they actually like interviewed the pastor, and he was like, they said they took him right in the room, left him in there alone, and he baptized him, and he was like, I can't remember what he said. He said something to him like, welcome to like the Lord's son. I don't know, something like that, but yeah, he said the pastor actually said he was like pretty scared at first. But
I'm sorry, but you're not going where you think you're going to go when you die.
Right, bro. Yeah.
Nothing's going to save you at this point.
But at that point, that's what a lot of people turn to once they're in prison.
Yeah, I think I heard an interview that the pastor gave, and he said, "It's my duty as the Lord's,
Yeah.
like however they consider like worker or whatever, to if someone needs baptized, he's going to cleanse them of all their sins no matter what."
Yeah.
That's where religion, I'm sorry, gets a little bit sketchy for me.
Yeah.
It gets a little bit fuzzy. Like,
Yeah.
just because you think the Lord is going to save you
Not everything
doesn't
is
mean you can go
Yeah.
kill 17
Yeah.
people.
Mhm.
Facts.
Like,
I can't believe it took the jury 10 hours to find him.
Yeah. It was probably more like in between the sane and not
That's-
sane stuff. That's probably why it took so long.
that's what it is. Do we think the jury got it right convicting him to the life sentences?
The jury doesn't decide the sentencing, the judge does. The
Yeah.
jury just decides if he's
guilty or not guilty. Yeah. And then the judge hands out the sentencing.
Dahmer was killed on November 28, 1994 by his fellow prison inmate Christopher Scarver. In accordance with his inclusion in regular work details, Dahmer was assigned to work with two other convicted murderers, Scarver and Jesse Anderson. After they had been left alone to complete their tasks, guards returned to find that Scarver had brutally beaten both men with a metal bar from the prison weight room. Dahmer was pronounced dead after approximately 1 hour. Anderson died from his injuries days later. A prison guard claimed that shortly after the murders, Scarver, who was believed to be schizophrenic, said, "God told me to do it." In 2015, Scarver spoke to the New York Post about his reasons for killing Dahmer. Scarver alleged that he was disturbed not only by Dahmer's crimes, but by a habit Dahmer had developed of fashioning severed limbs from prison food to antagonize other inmates. After being taunted by Dahmer and Anderson during their work detail, Scarver said that he confronted Dahmer about his crimes before beating the two men to death. He also claimed that prison guards allowed the murders to happen by leaving them alone. Catherine Lacey, the mother of Dahmer's victim, Oliver Lacey, said that his death brought her no closure. She said, "The hurt is worse now because he's not suffering like we are."
Did you guys see one of the victims, like either aunt or like sisters, was in the courtroom? Did you see that shit?
Yeah.
And she just like starts talking like normally, and she's like, "I'll never forgive you," blah blah blah, and then she just fucking loses it.
She like got up
Like,
and
I fucking hate you.
yeah,
Like
she,
got up in his
charged
fucking
in.
face,
She
dude.
like charged across the courtroom and shit.
Which I
mean, I can't blame
imagine.
her at all. But I mean,
And the bad thing about that is, even him hearing that and being there in the family member's presence, he still probably felt no remorse.
He says he did, But man,
He doesn't show it.
No.
He does not show it.
Yeah, it's almost just like he's got this like blankness to him, like when he's just in a normal
There's
setting.
just nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
So do we think he should have been locked up in an institution, or do we think he got?
I mean,
What do they say? I don't want to sound cliched, but do we think he got what he deserved?
I don't know. It's
I
like
don't. So
It's.
with
I've always
people
believed.
that
I can see it
commit
either
such
way.
heinous crimes. Yes, I agree. Like, part of me says like let them rot in prison, stay in there, but then it's just like it's a waste of taxpayer dollars.
yeah, yeah. When you kill that
So
many
just-
people, man, it's like I'm more like eye for an eye, but I could see
Yeah.
where like some people would see it the other way around too.
It goes back to like the lethal injection thing. Like, do we execute the death penalty, or do we just let them? Because somebody's going to kill them in prison,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah,
Just,
especially
I mean,
something like that, high profile and those type of crimes.
high profile, those type of crimes. You also have the race aspect of it, even though Dahmer says it had nothing to do with race. I mean, it had something to do with race.
Yeah,
A black man killed
you
him.
could definitely argue that too. I mean, that's why a lot of people would probably argue that that's why he picked those people, because he knew that the cops wouldn't care and he knew that
Yeah.
they wouldn't be missed.
As sad as it is to
Yeah.
say, I didn't know that Scarver dude killed another dude. Did they have
Yeah,
show?
yeah. He was like another convicted murderer or something like that.
I think they only showed him killing Dahmer in the Netflix thing, right? Because I remember kind of watching that with
Yeah,
you.
I don't remember. I watched it when it first came out. So
That
it's been a
show
while.
popped when it came
Yeah.
out. It was so big.
That's what there's actually one of the guys talking on I watched like it was an older like show from probably like late 90s early 2000s, but that's what one of the guys said. There was almost like a poetic justice to the way he was killed, because he was killed the same exact way that he killed his first victim.
That's kind of crazy. I didn't
Yeah.
think about that.
Yeah.
Like just
Killed
blunt
with
force
the
trauma.
barbell. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's all we got today for Jeffrey Dahmer. Tapping Tiffany
What
was
do you-
making
what
her
do you
way
think?
back to the show.
Let's give your.
Oh yeah.
What do you think about like his? Do you think he should have been put in like a mental institution, or like, do you think he got what he deserved and like going to prison?
That was a tough one that we just kind of talked about. I don't even think I answered it.
Yeah,
I think he got what he deserved.
yeah,
I think he did too, because if he's sane enough to, I know he only went there for a semester, I think.
Yeah.
If he's sane enough to go to Ohio State
and be in the army too.
and be in the Army,
Yeah.
I think you talked about that earlier. Erica said something like,
Yeah.
to be in the Army, you have to pass psychological tests, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
I
There's,
think
there's
so.
there's I'm sure a bunch of testing, like
They're not
physical.
gonna just
and-
like put the gun in the
Yeah.
arm of somebody that's
and-
Insane,
Yeah.
correct. And that could literally, yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I think he got what he deserved by going to prison.
Yeah,
And we're
I
not,
think
so
it's
we're,
weird that he got killed the same way that he killed his first victim.
yeah, that's what he was just talking about.
Yeah.
We're not saying by any means like we're glad he got fucking killed or anything like
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah,
we're
no,
saying
not
pretty
at all.
much we didn't want him to get the easy way out.
Yeah.
You know, kill 17 people, then get to live the rest of your life
Plead
with
insanity.
free food
Yeah.
in a padded room.
Yeah.
yeah. This dude definitely probably had some mental issues, but as far as like being just like an overall like insane person, like I just don't see it.
Do you guys see that he watched The Exorcism 3 to get himself in the mood?
Yeah.
Yes, I did see that.
Yeah,
There was
they-
another one too.
I think they actually show that. They showed that
They
in
do.
the series
They
that he would
do.
put that on.
he makes his victims watch it too.
Is that the one where like the memes
meme.
got the
Yeah,
memes
the
going
meme,
around?
yeah.
He's pointing at the fucking TV.
every time he points at the TV, they'd have like something up. They'd have like a Nelly tip drill or something on there.
that fucking video
Yeah.
when he's going around, he's just like
Yeah.
doing this
Dancing.
at the table.
Yeah.
All right, next week. I don't think you guys are going to be on next week. I don't think
No.
so. You
We're
You
doing
can.
Salem witch trials next.
you absolutely can. I have no
You
problem.
just started watching
Hocus
Hocus
Pocus.
Pocus. That's what it's based around.
yeah, I
Where
have
are
no
they at
problem.
in that movie.
Salem.
Yeah, I have no problem
Are
with you
they?
guys being on, but
I think I'm gonna take that week off.
that's fine because the week after I would like both of you to be on. She's definitely going to be on. The week after that is Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Yes.
The story about Ed and Lorraine Warren.
You know who that is?
Mm-mm.
They are.
They're
Oh,
like the
you're
ghost
going
hunter,
You watched The
too.
Conjuring?
Like The Conjuring.
Oh hell! I
And,
don't
like,
do
the
stuff
doll.
Like that.
Oh, she's gonna
What
have
was the doll's name? Annabelle?
Annabelle.
Yeah.
No, I've seen
Yeah.
that
Well,
movie.
so there's not a horror, but like a true documentary on them on HBO Max that you'll have to watch.
Yeah.
It tells like the story of them and what they.
I'm broke. I don't have HBO Max.
Yeah, you
I might
do.
have to hook. Yeah, you do. You watch Game of
We have
Thrones.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, she talks shit about it while I watch it.
Right. Yeah. So Salem witch trials next week. Ed and Lorraine Warren the week after, and then we're gonna wrap up Spooky Month with a fun Halloween episode.
Yes, sir.
Talk about our favorite memories of Halloween.
Origins of
Talk about
Halloween.
haunted houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about the origin of Halloween.
Yeah.
You know, all that fun stuff.
So, tell them tap in, Tiff.
Make sure you tap in.
Tap in.
Tap in.
You guys want to show off your like sweaters
yeah,
and hoodies
bro.
that you guys
Yeah,
got?
we got the new-
Little trial run type deal.
Little trial run for the
Yeah.
merch.
Little trial run. I like Tiffany's a lot.
I do too.
Yeah, G's just got the basic gray. Tiffany's got the charcoal black
Love it.
fire.
Repping the squad.
Nice. Good job, Erica.
But make sure you guys subscribe to all the socials. Follow, download, like, share. Tell a friend, be a friend, tell a friend.
All that.
Appreciate
Give
all
us
the
episode
love.
ideas too. We're
Episode ideas.
Yeah, we
is
like
gonna be
episode
awesome.
ideas.
Absolutely.
See you guys next week.
Peace.
See ya.
Peace.
Say peace.
Peace.
Peace.